Good afternoon, children.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
We were, we were discussing about the different classes of fungi in the previous period and we completed it. Any doubts? Any doubts you have regarding the different classes of fungi? No. Okay. Now we are proceeding to the next kingdom. We have already completed the first three kingdoms. What are the kingdoms that we completed? Basma, which all kingdoms we finished explaining or discussing? Unmute. Unmute. Emmeline?
Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Hesta, and Fungi.
Now two more are remaining. Those two are the familiar ones, animal kingdom and plant kingdom. Let's learn about plant kingdom in brief because next chapter is all about plant kingdom. Very briefly, you're going to learn. Only the main characteristics we'll discuss and more we will learn in the next chapter. Kingdom Plant Day. It includes plants. When you say plants, they are eukaryotic and they have got chlorophyll and they are provided with a cell wall which is made up of the carbohydrate cellulose. They are provided with a cellulosic cell wall, a cell wall made of cellulose. They are green in color, they are cellulosic. Cellulosic cell wall, chlorophyll present or the green pigment is present which enables them to carry out photosynthesis and then they are eukaryotic. It goes without saying. Plants, animals, these are eukaryotic organisms. What do you mean by eukaryotic organisms? All those organisms which are made up of cells having a well-defined nucleus. Well-defined nucleus means a nucleus with a proper nuclear membrane. Then some of them are partially heterotrophic. What we have learned is that plants are autotrophic. They can carry out photosynthesis and prepare their own food. But some of them are partially heterotrophic, means they can carry out photosynthesis at the same time they carry out heterotrophic mode of nutrition or they depend upon other organisms too for their food. Example, insectivorous plants like bladderwort, Venus flytrap, and there are parasites. Have you heard about plant parasites, children? Different types of plant parasites are there. Some are total plant parasites, some are partial plant parasites. And apart from the main mode of nutrition, that is autotrophic, some of them are partially heterotrophic, means they can carry out photosynthesis. If you take the case of insectivorous plants, as the name suggests, they can eat or they take in insects also. What is the reason why these plants feed on insects? So their plant body, whether it is pitcher plant, Venus flytrap or bladderwort, all they are equipped with some special parts which will help them to trap the insects and digest them. And why they should eat these insects, children? Is it because they are fed up of having vegetarian food? Once in a while they want to try something non-veg? Any reason? What is the reason? Who can tell me? Maybe in class 7 you have learned about this in CRT textbook.
Fulfill their
Night.
nitrogen requirements.
Yes, somebody is saying the answer. Was that Malavika?
Yes, ma'am, to fulfill
Ah,
their nitrogen requirements.
correct. Because these plants are found in soil that lack in nitrogen. So to compensate for the lack of nitrogen in the soil, they feed on these insects. So from the body of insects, they will satisfy their nitrogen requirement. And then there are plant parasites, Cuscuta, Doder. So these plants are actually total stem parasites. Cuscuta or Doder, it's a total stem parasite. They will twine around some other plants and they don't have proper leaves and roots. So they depend completely on the host organism to derive their nutrients. Then partial parasites are there. For example, our sandalwood tree or Xanthalum album, and this is a partial root parasite. They are green in color, they can carry out photosynthesis, but at the same time, they have some special structures, some specialized structure. You don't have to learn about all that. Since it was mentioned about plant parasite, I thought of mentioning it. Just a minute. They have some, this Xanthalum album or sandalwood tree, they have some specialized structures known as postoria, which will help in absorbing water and nutrients from the other plant, from the host plant. But they are not completely dependent on the host plant for getting the nutrients. They are green in color, they can carry out photosynthesis, but certain requirements are met by leading a parasitic life. So what you need to understand is that some of the plants, majority, most of them are autotrophic, but some of them, they are partially heterotrophic. An example, parasitic plants and insectivorous plants. Even under parasites, total and partial plant parasites are there, which you will learn in higher classes. Example, Cuscuta, or we even call it as Doda. Plant day includes different divisions: algae or Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta. Hope you are remembering all these, what you have learned. Cryptogame and Phanerogame. Class 9, sorry, class 9, you have learned diversity in the living world. In that particular chapter, you have learned about the different classes of plants. Broadly, we can categorize them into cryptogame and phanerogame. Under cryptogame, we have Thallophyta, or which includes algae, then Bryophyta or bryophytes, pteridophytes. And then under phanerogams, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Angiosperms are further divided into, can anybody say the two main divisions under angiosperms, children? Anyone? Dicots and monocots. Forgot, no? Jodi? Okay. So plant day includes algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, angiosperms and gymnosperms. These first three. Algae, it comes under the division Thallophyta with an undifferentiated plant body. The first three, they are coming under cryptogams, hidden reproductive organs, cryptogame or cryptogams, you can say. Then the next two, gymnosperms and angiosperms, they are included under phanerogams. At least when I'm saying the names, are you remembering? Phanerogams, phanerogame. Okay. And angiosperms are further divided into monocots and dicots. Monocotyledonous plants and dicotyledonous plants. I'm not getting any response from your side. Have you heard about all these?
Yes.
At least one responded. Okay. Here you don't have to learn in detail, but next chapter you will be learning. Okay. So once again, I will repeat the points. This particular kingdom, as the name suggests, it includes plants. It includes plants, and these plants are eukaryotic, presence of chlorophyll, and also a cellulosic cell wall. And some of them, most of them, as it is mentioned there, they are having chlorophyll and they can carry out photosynthesis. They are autotrophic, but some of them are partially heterotrophic. Say, for example, insectivorous plants and parasitic plants. The different divisions included under this kingdom are algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. Instead of algae, I think you have learned it under the heading Thallophyta. Now moving on to the next slide, life cycle of plants. The plant life cycle has got two distinct phases. There are two distinct phases in the life cycle of plants. a diploid phase and a sporophytic phase. Sporophytic phase is diploid and the gametophytic phase is haploid, and these two alternate with each other, which means the sporophytic phase will produce the gametophytic phase. Gametophytic phase will lead to sporophytic phase. So this will get repeated or they alternate with each other. So in the life cycle of plants, there are two major stages, the multicellular sporophytic phase and the gametophytic phase, which alternate with each other, means one phase will lead to the other phase. Sporophytic phase will result in the production of gametophytic phase. And here in this picture, you can see gametes. Gametophyte is producing gametes. Gametes undergo fertilization. See, here it is written gametangium. Gametangium means the structure where gametes are being produced. So from the gametes will fuse. Gametes will fuse. You call the process fertilization, forms a zygote. Now zygote is developing into sporophyte, which has got a sporangium. Where the spores are produced by meiotic division, they will germinate and form a gametophyte. These gametophyte, or this particular gametophyte has got gametangium, where the gametes are produced. And these gametangium, from there the gametes will produce, they will fuse, and this gets repeated or they alternate with each other. Sporophytic phase is diploid, gametophytic phase is haploid. Okay, and more about this also we'll be learning in the next chapter. So I'm not going into the details of the same. Once again, in the life cycle of plants, two major stages are present. One is sporophytic phase, the other one is gametophytic phase. Another point to notice, sporophytic phase, that is diploid, whereas the gametophytic phase is haploid. The sporophyte will form gametophyte. From gametophyte, sporophyte will be formed, and these two phases will alternate with each other. As you can see in the figure, the sporophytic phase, it's having sporangium, and inside the sporangium or spore bearing body, meiotic division takes place. Haploid spores will be formed. They will germinate and form, or they will lead to the formation of gametangium, where gametes are produced. Once the gametes are produced, they fuse together and they form the zygote, which will develop into sporophyte. So there are two distinct phases which alternate with each other. The duration of the haploid and diploid phases, and whether these phases are free living or dependent on others, that is different for different groups of plants. So how long the sporophytic phase will last, or gametophytic phase will last, or are they free living, or they are dependent on others, all those differs. So each plant has got different period of, so if you take a particular plant, its sporophyte, the duration of its sporophytic and gametophytic phase, and whether it is maybe in one particular plant, sporophyte might be free living, gametophytic phase is dependent. In certain other groups of plants, vice versa. Maybe gametophytic phase is free living, sporophyte is dependent. So that will keep changing, and all that details you will learn in the next chapter. This phenomenon is known as alternation of generation. It's a very important topic, but here you need to learn only very briefly. This will be elaborated in the next chapter. Once again, in the life cycle of plants, there are two distinct phases, sporophytic phase and gametophytic phase. Gametophytic phase is haploid, sporophytic phase is diploid, and one phase will lead to the formation of another phase, or else you can say they alternate. These two phases alternate with each other, one after the other. It appears one after the other. And the duration of these two phases and whether they are free living or dependent, it cannot be generalized because it is different for different groups of plants. And you call this phenomenon as alternation of generation. That was all about plant kingdom. Now we are moving to the Moving on to the next one, kingdom Animalia. And in kingdom Plantae, we said it includes all the plants. So similarly, kingdom Animalia, the different animals are included under this kingdom. And they are heterotrophic, eukaryotic, multicellular organisms. I don't think you need more explanation for this. Animal cells, no cell wall is present, only plasma membrane, which is made up of lipids and proteins, as you know, directly or indirectly depend on plants for food. They are heterotrophic. So they depend upon other organisms. Whether herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore, all of them are directly or indirectly dependent on plants. Herbivores, as you know, they are directly depending on plants, but if it is a carnivore, indirect dependence, because they feed on a herbivorous animal which is directly dependent on plants. So that means all the organisms, they depend upon plants either directly or indirectly for their food. Digestion is internal. Means the digestion process is taking place inside the body, and we are holozoic. We carry out holozoic mode of nutrition. This we have learned in class 10. Who can recollect and tell me what is meant by holozoic mode of nutrition? Anybody? Holozoic. Meherin, what is holozoic mode of nutrition?
The digestion takes place inside the body.
For that, what has to be taken in the food? The whole food material will be.
Food is taken in and digested in.
The complex food particles are taken in and it is inside the body, it is being broken down. Whereas in saprophytic mode of nutrition and all, you know, some digestive juices will be secreted into the decaying matter or the dead matter, and then it will be broken down to simpler substances and it is absorbed by them. So that is taking place. The breaking down of the food particles is taking place outside the body. But in holozoic nutrition, for example, amoeba, human beings are examples of organisms with holozoic mode of nutrition. They take in the whole food material and there it is broken down. Inside the body, it is being broken down to simpler substances, not outside the body as in the case of fungi. In saprophytic organisms, some digestive juices are secreted into the food material or this dead and decaying matter. They'll break down into smaller particles, simpler substances, and which will be absorbed by the organisms. But here we take in the whole food material and it gets digested inside the body. And the food reserves are stored in the form of glycogen. Excess glucose can be converted into glycogen, and even food gets stored, lipids and all will get stored as fat in your body. So later, as and when it is required, it will be utilized to carry out the different functions of a body, to release energy or to carry out the different functions. Then they follow a definite growth pattern and grow into adults having definite shape and size. So we have a definite growth pattern, and growth is limited also. We grow only up to a certain age, unlike plants. Plants, they continue to grow till the end of their life. But animals, they can grow only up to a certain age and they have a definite growth pattern with a definite shape and size. And higher animals, they have a very elaborate or highly developed sensory and neuromotor mechanism. The different senses are well developed to receive the stimuli and to respond to them they will receive all the different external stimuli and respond to them. Highly developed sensory organs are there, and at the same time we have neuromotor mechanism. You might be remembering about the neuromotor mechanism which you had learned in class 10. Nerves are sending messages to the motor muscles through motor neurons, which will help in carrying out the different movement, or the body movement is taking place in response to the nerve signals reaching the muscles through motor neurons. So neuromotor mechanism as well as the sensory mechanism are highly developed, well developed. So very elaborate or highly developed in animals. Majority of them are capable of locomotion. Some of them, like certain organisms belonging to the phylum Porifera, like sponges, they are fixed at one place. But other than that, most of the animals, they are capable of movement. I could see many of the videos are of sexual reproduction is by copulation of male and female. So they carry out sexual reproduction. The main method of reproduction is by sexual means. And for this copulation means mating process. Male and female copulates, and that will result in fertilization leading to the formation of a zygote, and this zygote undergoes embryological development. Zygote will develop into embryo will further develop until it becomes a fully formed or fully developed organism. Okay, so we'll see those points which we learned so far. We learned about plant and animal kingdom very briefly. I don't think you need to see it again, but still. Alina Varghese is listening, no? Alina Varghese. I'm not getting any response.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll start with that once again. Quickly, we will summarize the points. So plants include eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms having a cell wall made of cellulose. And about the mode of nutrition also, I told you, mainly they are autotrophic, but some of them, they are partially heterotrophic. They carry out parasitic as well as insectivorous mode of nutrition too. And the main divisions included under this kingdom are algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Another important point that we learned is in the life cycle of plants, two distinct phases are there, a sporophytic phase and a gametophytic phase. Gametophytic phase is haploid, whereas sporophytic phase is diploid. And these two phases alternate with each other. And you call this phenomenon as alternation of generations. And the duration of these two phases and whether these phases are dependent on other forms or free living, all that differs, or it is not the same for all plants. It can be different for different plants. Then we learned about animal kingdom. Animals are multicellular, heterotrophic, eukaryotic, no cell wall. The animal cells have the outermost boundary is plasma membrane, which is made up of proteins and lipids. And all the animals, even though they are heterotrophic, we all are dependent on plants either directly or indirectly. Plant is the ultimate source of food for all the animals. Internal digestion takes place and the food can be stored in the form of glycogen or as fat, and the stored fat can act as an insulator or as and when it is required, these can be utilized to release energy. They carry out holozoic mode of nutrition, which means they take in the whole food material and the digestion or its breaking down takes place inside the body. Then we learn some of the unique features of animal kingdom or members of animal kingdom. They have a definite growth pattern. They will grow to adults having a definite shape and size. Depending upon each species, they have a definite shape and size. So they will be growing, and this growth is continued only for a particular period of time. So they grow only up to a particular age. And higher animals, they have a highly developed sensory and neuromotor mechanism which help them to coordinate the different actions and to carry out locomotion, etc. It also helps them to sense their surroundings and to respond to it. Most of them are capable of carrying out locomotion, and sexual reproduction is the main method of reproduction. And this is carried out by copulation between or mating, which takes place between male and female organisms, which will result in the formation of a zygote. The zygote will develop into embryo. That embryo will further develop to form a new organism. Hope you have no doubts. Any doubts, children? Yes or no? I'm not getting, whether it is yes or no, you can respond.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, okay. Now we are moving on to the last part of the chapter, viruses, viroids, prions, and lichens. Out of this, viruses and lichens you're familiar with. Viroids and prions are, I think they are new for you. Okay. Now moving on, we'll start with viruses. In 5 kingdom classification. So already we learned about the 5 kingdoms. Which are the 5 kingdoms? Kingdom Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, Animalia. But nowhere these organisms are placed. Viruses, viroids, prions, lichens, nowhere the names of these organisms were mentioned. And some acellular viruses and viroids, they are acellular, no cell. They don't have a cellular structure. And even lichens are not mentioned anywhere. So that is why they are put under different categories. Viruses are non-cellular. As the name suggests, they don't have any cellular structure. And we cannot consider them as living also. They are not truly living. And we can say that viruses are on the borderline between living and non-living. When they are outside a host cell or outside a living cell, they do not show any signs of life because they don't have any biochemical pathways or biochemical machinery of their own. Only when they enter a host cell, they show signs of life. That is why we say they are on the borderline between living and non-living, and they are not included under any of these kingdoms and dealt with as a separate category. They are inert, inactive crystalline structures outside the living cell. So once they enter the living cell, everything changes. But outside a living cell, they do not show any signs of life. They are inactive crystalline structures. They don't even have a cellular structure. They are highly inactive. And they are obligate parasites. I think I already told you what is meant by obligate parasite. Obligate parasites means these organisms have to lead a parasitic life to complete their life cycle. So if they don't survive, or if they are not leading a parasitic mode of nutrition, they cannot complete their life cycle. So viruses, they are obligate parasites means if they need to complete their life cycle, if they only when they enter a host cell, they are showing signs of life. Otherwise, they'll remain as inert crystalline structures. So they have no other choice, no other option. They are obligate parasites. If they have to multiply and if they have to show some signs of life, that is must. When they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of the host cell to replicate themselves, which can lead to the killing of the host. So once they enter the host cell, they'll start to multiply. They make use of the machinery of the host cell. And this is the reason why it is very difficult to prepare antiviral drugs. Antibiotics are easy to prepare when compared to antiviral drugs. The reason is for preparing antibiotics, like antibiotics are prepared from organisms like bacteria and fungi, and they can interrupt some important biochemical function of these organisms. Say, for example, I don't know whether I've told this, penicillin. Penicillin is an antibiotic produced from penicillium. If penicillin is introduced into the body of an organism or into the body of a man, and if he is infected with a particular bacterial or he is having a bacterial infection, this penicillin can interfere with the cell wall formation of the bacteria, that pathogenic organism or this bacteria, which is a pathogen. And then once a cell wall cannot be formed, bacteria cannot survive and they will get destroyed. I'll repeat again. Antibiotics, once introduced into the body of a patient, they will interfere with the biochemical reactions or pathways of that pathogen. And the pathogen cannot multiply if it is a bacterial, fungal, or even protozoan infection, because they have their own pathways. So once these medicines are introduced, those medicines are specifically interfering with the functions of those microbes without affecting that of the host. The host, the biochemical mechanism or the biochemical pathways of the host will not get affected, because all these pathogens which I mentioned, they are having their own biochemical pathways to multiply and replicate. So those functions are interrupted. But in the case of virus, If you take some antibiotics, it will not have any effect because these viruses are depending upon the biochemical pathways of the host. They don't have their own mechanisms. So if you take an antibiotic, that will be affecting the mechanisms of the host. That is why we say it is very important, very difficult to prepare or manufacture antiviral drugs. But still our scientists have succeeded in producing some of the antiviral drugs. And that is why most of the viral diseases, they'll get cured only after completing that duration. Like if you take the case of chicken pox, common cold will last for 7 days, whether you take or you don't take medicine. Chicken pox also, whichever medicines you take, it will last for 14, minimum 2 weeks, because only then you will be recovered. But at the same time, when you have a chicken pox, you might take some antibiotics if you have secondary bacterial infection. But those antibiotics which you're taking has got no effect on viral infection. All these points you had learned in lower classes. When they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of host cell and they will replicate and finally harms the host organism. So once they get an entry, then once or after entering the host cell, then they will give commands to the host cell. They take these host cells under control and they will give them the command, and these viral, the genetic material of the virus will get replicated within no time. And here you can see pictures of a few viruses. All are very attractive in appearance. Once again, these are acellular organisms. That is, viruses and viroids are acellular organisms. Then apart from that, lichens and prions are also included under this category. They are nowhere mentioned in the different kingdoms that we already learned. The main reason is viruses are non-cellular. Lichens are not acellular. You know, it's a symbiotic association. Both fungi and algae are involved. So we cannot group them neither under fungi or under plantae. Then viruses are acellular. They are not truly living. They are on the borderline between living and non-living. Viruses, they have an inactive crystalline structure when they are outside a living cell. But once they enter a host organism, they will make use of the biochemical pathways of the host organism and they'll start multiplying. They take over the machinery of the host cell and they replicate, and it can cause diseases in the host. Maybe it can lead to the death of the host organism, etc. So before I proceed further, quickly summarize. Any point? Did you understand what was taught so far? You felt I was going fast? I don't think you will interrupt me and tell to reduce the pace. That's why I'm asking. All are conserving energy as usual, no? Did you feel that I was going fast? I want to repeat the points. That's why I'm asking. It was fine. You were able to understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Respond, children. Hmm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Unless you're not well, you're okay?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, get the slide of Kingdom Animalia.
I will show you. I'll show. Just quickly summarize and then after that, I'll show you. Alina, tell me the main features of plant kingdom. And children, the number of students attending is day by day getting reduced. You want me to call your parents and find out the reason? I told you continuously 3 days. If you're absent, then I will have to speak to your parents, or else you message me the proper reason. Morning also, I found more or less the same number. I thought at least we are 42. Here it is only 31. Okay. Alina. You're saying something? Gaya?
It includes plants,
Mm.
eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms
Mm.
with cellulosic cell wall, and most of them are autotrophs. Some are partially heterotrophic.
Okay. some are parasitic, some are
Partially
insectivorous, some are
heterotrophs.
insectivorous also. Okay, then a few points about animal kingdom. Next one. Anjana, a few points about animal kingdom.
Animal cells like silver, most of them are capable of locomotion, sexual reproduction, locomotion. Most of them are capable of locomotion.
Okay, Meryl. Meryl. Meryl, are you there? No.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell me. Other points about animal kingdom. Very easy, no? Animals. What are the features, main features present in animals? They have an elaborate, what all mechanisms? Relay got cut off. Your relay also went. Who will say? Lakshmi?
They have elaborate sensory and neuromotor
Mechanisms.
mechanism.
Neuromotor, sensory and neuromotor mechanism. Then, what else we learn? All the points we completed. Okay, now about viruses, what did we learn? Eva, what did we learn about viruses?
Yes, ma'am. Viruses are they are non-cellular, acellular, so and they're not truly living.
Okay, then what else? Aditi Dev, another point.
Obligate parasites.
Yes,
Obligate parasites.
obligate parasites. Then Elaine,
When they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of the host cell to replicate themselves.
okay, repeat again without referring.
When they infect a cell, they interrupt the machinery by replicating themselves.
Once they enter the host cell, what they'll do? They'll take over
the machinery and replicate themselves.
replicate. And what happens to the host?
They will kill the host.
They might kill or harm the host. What else we learned about them? Only that? Outside the host cell, Tom. Outside the host cell, how do they remain? Viruses? Once they enter a host cell, what happens? Elaine said. Now, Tom, tell me, how do they appear outside a living cell?
They have a crystalline structure.
Inert also you have to mention. It's inactive, inert, crystalline structures, and they do not show any signs of life. Thank you, children. See you next class.